Siege, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, man. It's really, really cool to talk to you. I've been a big admirer of your music for a long time, so it's great to find out more about you. Where are you this morning? Where are you in the world?
I'm in Belgium in a little town called Hasselt.
So how close is that? Well, let's test my non-existent geographical knowledge of Belgium. How close is that to Dennis, to NightFunk?
He's from Mol, right?
I think so. I spoke to him about 4 weeks ago, maybe, and we had a great chat. And he again said the same thing. I'm from this tiny place in Belgium. You won't have heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like almost everything is like an hour away from me. Depending on traffic, it's like an hour.
That's cool. Well, that's good. I'm glad that we're spreading our geographical wings. And that's one thing we were just talking before we recorded about setups and recording and lights. And it's one thing that has opened. It's one positive thing of the COVID thing is that because before this, I was doing all the podcasts in person, and it was when I was either on tour or I was at someone's house or they're at my house. One thing it has opened up, which is a great thing, is that I probably would have almost never done a podcast with you because I probably would never have come to your house, or I might, if luckily enough, I might have booked you, or you might have been playing at the club. But one great thing about it is now it's so easy to reach out to people, and to be able to do this. And like I said to you, you look great, your feed's strong, you sound good. So we're gonna have a great chat, man. I wanna hit you off with some kind of COVID-y related questions, but not in a way that you might think. I want to ask you, when all this is over, and we're back to proper nightclubs with full of people and all that stuff that we really love, what's the first record you're going to play when you get back? Let's just say that party was sort of this weekend. Let's just say it was all done and finished and the clubs are open. It's safe. You don't have to worry about any of that. None of the politics of the virus. Just you get this surprise call, grab your stuff. You go in to play a club. It's 1 a.m. You get on the decks. What's the first record right now in the moment that you're going to put on? What's the first record that you want to hear in a club? You want the throng of people to feel it. What's that first record? Can be one of yours, can be an old one, can be a new one, can be something you've just heard, can be from back in the day. What's the first record you play back, man?
You know what? It would probably be something of myself, and it would be maybe the Mark Knight collab, because I just miss hearing stuff in the clubs, because we're working on stuff in the studio and it sounds good over here, but you really want to see the reaction of the crowd and hear how it sounds in a club. And that's something that, I mean, all the rest, it's all not so nice, to put it in a polite way, but like being able to play your music in a club and then translating that back to the studio, that's something that I really miss. So it will be probably the Mark Knight collab, because we need to get that finished.
Have you got a name for that yet?
Yeah, it's called Give It Up. It's
Nice.
a funny one. It's actually been released it wasn't pre-order on Beatport, I think.
Okay.
It was supposed to come out earlier as part of the Bullet series that Mark was doing. But then the clubs closed down, and Mark was like, well, this is like 3 club tracks.
Yeah.
We need the clubs for this to work. So they pulled it. Now it's coming out in January on the This Is Tool Room compilation, I think we're doing it on. But he was like, it needs more work and there's just something missing. And I hear the same, but if you could play it on a big club system, then you probably would be like, oh yeah, that's missing. Let's just fix it. And then it's an easy one.
Yeah, I miss that, man. There must be I mean, I'm the same. I have like at least 2 or 3 records that have been sat on for months that I'm just like, I can't possibly put this out, because the only way this works is if it's in a club or if it's on a terrace or if there's people there. Like, this is the only way that this record, otherwise it's just going to come out, disappear, and never be remembered or played ever again. But there must be so much music. There must be so many producers and DJs sitting on so much music. Yeah. Now, you may have already answered this because you've mentioned one name, but hopefully not. Again, it's all over. You get the email and in my imaginary world, and I'm allowed to do this because it's my podcast, you're going to have a dream back-to-back. So the first gig back, it's going to have to be a back-to-back because I'm telling you it is because it's my podcast. But who is the dream back-to-back? So this weekend, everything's fine. The clubs are open. No worry about COVID. Everything's cool. But you're doing a back-to-back to get back into the swing of things. Who would you be like, oh, it's got to be? Who's you back-to-back with?
I'm going to go with two options. Like,
okay.
I thought of this the other day. Like, Dennis Ferrer is one of my, like, production-wise, almost everything he puts out, I'm like, this is so great. But then again, he's not something that's on top of your mind, like, all the time. You can forget about him sometimes because he's not, like, in your face all the time. But I do really like everything he does. So I think that would be a cool one. It would be slightly more house, on a house tip, of course.
Yeah.
And the other one would be a bit more obvious, but would be Carl Cox, I think, because he's been doing some like supporting on the music, and I that's amazing, to be honest. And he's just such a legend. And I mean, being able to doing a back-to-back with him, and it would be a bit more like my other side, a bit harder, a bit more techno. That would be amazing, I think.
Nice, I'll take that. Okay, so the last question is sort of a flip. Not the last question, but the last of these little ones that I'm thinking of is sort of a flip of the first question. So you've gone and done your first gig back. You've played, well, you're going to do your first gig back. You drop this new one with Mark Knight as your first record. The crowd goes crazy. You have an amazing set. It's in one of your favorite clubs to play or whatever. We'll come on to that later. But what's the last record you play on that first gig back? You know, you're closing the club. Everyone's had an amazing time. The vibe is just unreal because everyone's missed it for so long. What's the last record that you play of that first gig back?
There's no last record. We're going to keep on going, man.
Cool. Well, I'll take that. I think that's a great answer. Let's go back then, way before first records and last records and collabs. Let's go right back, way before touring the world, way before putting records on Beatport, way before all of that stuff. I want to take you right back to being a child, and I want you to think back to those really early musical memories. Like, what do you remember? Who was playing music? Was it in the house? Was it in the car? Was it parents? What were those first, even before you're choosing what to listen to? What are the things that are just in your ears that are being played around the house, in the car? What can you remember of those first bits of music?
It's like, I'm not gonna say it's embarrassing, but it's like, it's not so cool. Sometimes I hear people like, yeah, my parents were into disco and they were playing, and yeah, like my parents were more into like classical music. And I remember like Andrea Bocelli, something that was played in the house and that I was like listening to, and I actually quite liked it. And even more stuff like that, which is kind of weird if I think about it now, but that's like the earliest memories of music. And then we're a bit of a musical family. Like my granddad used to play the piano. My uncle plays piano as well, so I've been around that growing up as well. And then I went to musical school, and then I went to go and play the pianos as well. But by that time, I was introduced via my older nephews to like the more Euro dance stuff. Like we had Tu Fabiola, Tu Unlimited, stuff like that. And that was more like, that's when the electronic music came into the picture, and I was like, that's interesting. But then I was playing the piano, and it didn't sound like that kind of music. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna stop with the piano. I want to do the synthesizer stuff. But you hear it's different, but as a child, you don't understand. Like, okay, this is a piano, it gives you that sound. You get a synthesizer, it gives you another sound. But like, it's basically the same. So now I'm like, I wish I'd finished my school so I could like play the piano. But yeah, where did you grow up then? Did you grow up in what country? Whereabouts did you grow up?
In Belgium, yeah. All right, okay, so you grew up there. So it's interesting because I always the more that I know this, and I know this isn't Scandinavia. But when you started saying about that, there's that history of like, and I know it's not Belgium, but there's that history of like the Scandinavian countries like Sweden. They seem to do so much more musically, certainly than UK. Like used to talk to like, you know, those all this when I used to speak to all the Swedes about the stuff they were doing. Like, oh yeah, like every night after school we were just making music when we were like 12, and you're like, what? That wasn't what we were doing after school when we were 12. But was that what it was like in Belgium? Like, were you an outlier because you went to music college, or was that a thing that a lot of people were doing?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, because you asked now, I'm thinking about it. And like my brothers, they didn't go to musical school, so I'm not sure why. Probably I was pulled towards it, and my parents were like, yeah, you can do musical school. And I think that's, but not everyone in Belgium is doing musical school. That's definitely not the case.
Can you remember the first bit of music that was like yours, that like you held, whether it was bought for you or you bought with kind of pocket money or whatever? But can you remember that first bit of music, whether it was a CD or a bit of vinyl or a tape, or even like, can you remember that first bit of physical music that you were like, this is mine and I can play it as many times as I want and it's mine and I'll keep it in my room?
I think there's two that I remember, and one is like Marshall Mathers, I Like It Loud.
Yeah.
And that's where it, like, when I say it's a bit weird, maybe when I was like 10, 11, 12, I was listening to Thunderdome and like the really hardcore basically. And like that was like one of the Marshall Mathers one. I remember one of my nephews had it, I think. And I was like, and it had like a distinct single as well. And I was like, I need to have that. And then back then you could buy singles in the supermarket. So I was like, Mom, I want that. And then you could listen to them as well. So when they were doing groceries, I was in the supermarket, like listening to the CDs.
Yeah.
So that's one that I remember. It's probably my earliest one. And then another one is Eiffel 65, I'm Blue.
What a record.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah. It is what it is. And back then it was the music, the electronic music that came on the radio, and that's what's like got my interest.
And can you remember, and again, it sometimes seems like a silly question to ask now because of the world we live in, but can you remember the first time that you were really aware that somebody was a DJ? Like that was their kind of job. Their job was to choose and mix records and play them for other people's enjoyment. Like, do you remember the first time that became apparent to you? Like, was it radio? Did you see someone at like a concert or an underage thing? Did you have a friend? Or when was the first time that you like really became aware of who a DJ was and what they did?
Well, it was like friends or people that we knew. And then I think there were two people where we went to, and they had like a mixer sitting there, and they were like, yeah, it's to mix music. And that's like, that appealed to me, so I wanted to do that as well. But they were not like professional DJs, they were just like teenagers like myself, but they had like the equipment, so I was like, that's what I want. And my granddad, he was working for Philips, and he helped develop the cassette. How do you say it in English?
Cassette tape. Yeah,
tape. Yeah. So so he had like loads of equipment, I think test equipment or old equipment. So he hooked me up with an amplifier and a tape deck. And then from someone for Christmas, we got like a portable CD player. And I was like, okay, I got like two sources now. I need a mixer. So I went and with my dad to the store, we bought like the cheapest GB system mixer. So you only had the faders. And I was like, yes, now I can mix. And I put something on there, and I put something, like my tapes were like recorded from the radio. So when it was like the hit list, I would record the songs that I liked from the radio, and then I had like a CD. And then I opened up the faders and it sounded like shit. And I was like, how is this possible? I mean, I got all the equipment. Why is it not, when I move the faders, isn't it sounding nice? So that was a bit of a disappointment, so to say. And then we had computers back then, and we were quite early because my dad, he was like self-employed. So we had And my uncle, he was into like the IT stuff. So we was like, yeah, you need to get internet. And we had internet and we had a computer. So I found, I think it was Virtual DJ or something like that. I got
cool.
a piece of software, and I was like, oh, you can speed it up and you need to like match the BPMs. And I was learning. And so when I figured that out and I had some play on the computer, then I was like, okay, I need like vinyl decks, and I saved some money, and I went, I got, I think, GB System decks. So that's when I figured it all out, how it worked. And I think I was 14 when I bought my decks.
Wow. I think it's so interesting because even just you explaining that now, it was so much more difficult. It was so hard to try to become a DJ back then. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember a similar kind of story and wanting decks and getting poor ones. And whereas it is the internet and technology, like you've just mentioned, has really stripped back the gateways or the gates that were holding people back when we were young. Like, now it's so much easier to become a DJ, getting a controller, having a computer. Getting music is so much easier. Producing music is so much easier with Ableton. And, you know, it was, you know, 15, 20 years ago, it was so much more difficult and so much more expensive to get into this as a hobby. Did you, it's a question that I like to ask, you know, a lot of people on this podcast is like, did you want to be a DJ? Like, was your first thought, I want to be a DJ, like I want the equipment you've just explained? Or was your first thought, I want to be a producer, I want to make and write music? Or were they kind of concurrent?
No, definitely DJ first, because like, even when you said like, when did you knew you want to be a DJ? Did you see someone? And like you say, now you can go on YouTube and you can see streams from a club. But I think I never seen a DJ, because I wasn't even old enough to get into clubs when I was going to clubs playing there. So it was like, that was like the first time I went inside a club and I couldn't even like see a DJ. But definitely.
How did you learn? Like, you know, pre-YouTube, pre-everything else, how did you learn to mix music on these decks that you got when you were like 14? How did you learn?
Well, I got like the principles of the software, so with Virtual DJ, and right. I was like, okay. You had like your auto match or something, so it would match the BPMs. But I could figure out like how it worked, like you speed them up so they're like in the same rhythm. So I could understand how it would like work. And then when I bought the setup, I got some free vinyls from the guy who sold them, and were like shit records. But I went into my room and I installed everything, and I didn't leave the room until I had my first like beat match, more or less, and I could get them straight. And I was like, yeah, okay, it works, it's fine. And then I think I went to bed, and the next day I was back to it. But I definitely want to be a DJ first, and I started off playing the local youth club,
youth club.
Yeah.
And what were you playing back then? Were you playing that harder stuff? Were you playing kind of the harder dance music?
No. By then it was like we called it groove. It was like basically house records with like disco samples in it. So
okay.
All the
do you mean like Junior Jack, that kind of stuff, like Stupid Disco and stuff like that, or
stuff like that? And yeah, but even like some bit more cheesy sometimes. Like when I was going through my collection the other day, I was like, oh, this, I still like it, but it's some kind of cheesy stuff in there as well. But like Junior Jack stuff as well.
So had you stopped? Like had you stopped? You said, you sort of mentioned this, that, you know, you'd stopped playing the piano at this point. So you're totally focused now on learning DJ technicality, like you know, you're learning. Have you stopped at this point when you're 15, 16? Are you not? You're not making music now. You're not playing the piano. You're not trying to produce anything. No. You are focused on being a DJ. Cool. And so how did those first? So you're playing in a youth club. Do you remember getting your first sort of gigs in a bar or a club? Like, how did that come about? Can you remember when those first gigs were?
Yeah, definitely. Because we were starting at the youth club, and by then, also via the internet, I was like downloading some sets from like the clubs, and like there were a few clubs that were playing the music that I was drawn to, and then one of these clubs, they were doing like a DJ competition. And I think even before that, I had like following on from the youth club, the yearly party from the Scouts. How do you say it? The local party that was held every year, because the people saw me in the youth house. They were like, okay, you can come play our parties. That came first, I think. And then I was like, okay, I want to play in a proper club now. And then they were hosting a DJ contest. So I sent in a tape, and they were like, yeah, it's cool, you can come and play. But I was reading on the internet, and they were saying like people that could go and play as well. I was like, yeah, it's nice, but it was on Fridays. There's not many people there because it's the new thing. And basically what happened was, it was like a really cool club. They were doing really well. And then the police station, they moved around and they came sit right next to the club. So that wasn't quite, at that point I didn't understand it, but now I'm like, yeah, of course. That's why it didn't went as well as it was. So they were like, okay, we need to do something, and they were getting in fresh talent. And I read like, okay, there's not many people there, and it was always two new talents that could go play there. And the other one was selected. He was actually from Diepenbeek. So I didn't know him personally, but I knew he was like sitting relatively close to where I'm from. And I hit him up and I was like, we both gonna play there, but there's not many people there. And I was like, I had the idea, like, let's rent a big bus and we gather all our friends together, and that's how we do it. So that's what we done.
Made your own party.
Yeah, we had like the bus, but there were problems with the bus as well, I think, because I couldn't drive, so I needed to be on the bus to get to the club, and the bus was too late, and I needed to get there on time, and it was my first, and I was nervous as hell, and I was like, So someone was like, I'll drive you, no worries. So we went in the car, we drove to the club, and I was like organizing the bus thing as well. So I was like, is everything gonna work out? Anyways, I got in the club, I started playing, and like I read online, there was no people there. And I started to play a few records, and all of a sudden, like, the bus arrived and the people started to come in, and it was like, I don't know, 50 people, but it was like a really small, it was basically like a living room club. So with 50 people, it was like, all right. And the guy at the bar was like, what's happening? And he needed to call up some people to come and work, because he thought like there will be no one there. And obviously, because it's all friends, they were all like, yeah, ooh. And it was like, we had a really great night. And all of a sudden they were like, oh yeah, you can come play again. And then other clubs came as well. But what I didn't know at that time, it was like, they only ask you because you bring your bus of friends. And when that started, like, they're not gonna come every time. So we stopped doing that as well. And then they were like, where are your friends? And I was like, again, like, disappointed, like, okay, so that's it's not because of the music I play, it's just because we bring people, and that's making them money, of course.
I think you make two. I've just started to laugh there. You make two really good points, which is, yeah, and it's a great metaphor for, I think, a lot of people in the music industry, like our music industry, which is create your own party. You know, my next question is going to be, did you start to run your own night? But I just want to make another point. Like, so many of us have had to do that to kickstart our careers, which is start our own party, you know, book other DJs, fill it with people we know. You know, it's definitely something I did as a kid, and something that, you know, I'm still doing now. But I love it, even that little bit at the end when you were like, then I realized that it wasn't really about the music. It was just about people coming and the money. And I think that probably still is absolutely true for where we're at now in the music industry. Some DJs are just booked because they know they're going to sell out the clubs. Do you know what I mean? And that's, you know,
I mean, now we understand, but back then I think I was 16 or 17. So you're still kind of young. And even thinking back at it, I'm like, I was more hands-on back then than now, because I'm not doing that anymore. And back then I was just, let's do it. But you don't see the whole picture. I was just driven by, I want to play my music in a club, and I'm going to do everything to get there. And I just thought like, yeah, it's nice as well. Let's bring all our friends and let's have a good time.
Did you start to run your own night then? Like, was that a logical progression to you? Like, when you realized that, did you start a night and like brand it and is that something you did?
No. So basically what I did, my reaction was like, okay, so if they don't ask me for my music and they just ask me for the friends I'm bringing, I'm going to make my own music, and I'm going to make sure that they will ask me for my music, because it's my music and I'm not just playing. So that's when I got into the production side of things.
And okay, so this is a great segue. It's like you've already known what I'm going to ask you. So what's your thought process then? You're still really young, like you said, you're sort of 16. Can you, if you think back, can you remember what bit of software did you think I need to learn music theory first? Did you go out and get Cubase or something? What were those first steps in your plan to produce music?
I had some plays with, I don't know what it was called, but you get it like with the cornflakes, like discs with like really simple music making software, basically just samples and all in the same key, and you could just press play on different stuff and build your own song like that. And then I think I got Fruity Loops, of course, because it's nice and easy. You can just click and press play and something's coming out. So I did work with that for a while.
What were you making? What were you what sort of stuff were you trying to make? What sort of stuff were you making back then? Was it that same sort of disco-y infused groove stuff, or was it what were you making?
No, a bit of everything. Like electronic music, but just whatever. I wasn't like really thinking. I think it was more of a learning phase rather than, okay, this is what I want to make. I was just like playing with it, experimenting with it, and sometimes I would do like something a bit harder, like stuff I was listening to. Like jump music was kind of hot back then as well, and sometimes it would be more like a houseier, groovier, trying to create a groove, because I didn't know about sampling back then. It was just all like playing around with it a little bit.
Did DJing take a slight back seat then? Like, did things sort of switch? Like, all right, okay, now I'm going to learn how to make music. Or were you still DJing on the side? Did you get little residencies? Were you playing, or was it like, right, okay, no one's, if I don't bring a crowd, they don't book me, make music? Was it, or were things running concurrently? Were you still DJing while you were learning?
I was probably still DJing at home, still DJing in the youth house, because that was like 2 streets away, and they still really liked my music, and that was something that I could play my record. But it was more like I went there, grab a pint with my friends, and you would jump on the decks if you wanted to, or if the people were like, "Come on, go play some records," and I was like, "Hey, okay, that's fine." It was more that kind of vibe.
Sounds great. I wish I could do it tonight. It sounds really fun.
It was really nice. But like, I was playing a few bits here and there, but not like massively. Actually, when you popped the question, like, were you running your own nights? Thinking back of it, I was like, maybe I'd better start running my own nights instead of producing music. But anyway, so I was still like doing both, like playing sometimes, definitely at home, because I really enjoyed DJing as well.
Yeah.
But I was like trying to understand everything about producing music.
So what's in I sort of I think your first record as Siege was on Beatport around 2010, so around 10 years ago or something. What happened in this gap between you being at the youth house and starting to use Fruity Loops? What happened between that point and the point of the first Siege record coming onto Beatport? Now there might be a lot, and you don't need to go into all of it, but what happened in that journey in between the young kid with Fruity Loops in the youth house and Siege dropping his first record on Beatport?
So I moved on from Fruity Loops to Ableton back then, just because it's a bit more professional, and especially I think by now it's FL Studio, and I'm not like saying it's bad or anything, but back then it was like Fruity Loops and it was more of a toy kind of thing, and you couldn't use VSTs, I think. So that's why I moved on to Ableton to make everything a bit more professional. And when I was 18, I went to go study in Leuven as well. And in Leuven, I met people that I knew. Like when you were asking about where I seen people DJing, like one of the guys was like the son of friends of my mom and dad. So he had like a setup at home, but then his parents divorced, my parents divorced, so we didn't really see him anymore. And then in Leuven, everybody was going to Leuven to study. That I met him again, and I was like, oh, it's been a long time. And one of the guys there, because my friends from where I was going to school, they didn't go to Leuven, so I was like more or less going into the big student city, and I was like, what am I gonna do? I don't know many people there. And then I met via old friends as well. I met some people, and they had like this one guy. He had like this place where he lived. He had like a bar in there, and like every Tuesday night, I think everyone was just going there. And he had some decks as well. He was playing music. So at that place, I ran back into Xavier, and he was like, "Hey, how have you been? I'm still making music." And we had a chat. And he was doing an act with Sam Thomason. They were called You and Me. And so I started sending them some music, and they ran a label back then, their own label, and they were gonna do a cover of Rui da Silva, Touch Me. And they were like, we need a remix. We want a remix. Do you want to do a remix? And I was like, yeah, sure. But why not? And I was hanging out on Laidback Luke's forum back then, because that was like a place where all the young producers. I mean, I think that even Avicii was hanging out
huge,
there.
Yeah. Oh, I posted my tracks and got feedback from Luke.
Yeah. So I was chatting a bit with Luke as well. And
such a nice guy.
To be honest, it was, especially back then, it was like amazing thinking back. Like he was just listening to your stuff and sending you
really detailed feedback, man. Like
really good.
Because I'm guilty now of getting stuff from people and just being like, yeah, sounds sick. Like, but like Luke would write you like a good paragraph or two talking about frequencies and talking about reverb tails and talking, it wasn't just like, yeah, sounds good, lots of energy. He really went into like soundscaping and mixing and all kinds of really in-depth stuff.
So yeah, I did the remix. They liked it. I think they put it out. I don't think it was on vinyl. And I sent it to Luke, and Luke was like, really good idea, but it's not sounding right. And I was like, oh fuck. And it was sounding quite horrible, to be honest. So I went back in and done some tweaks on it. It was sounding much better. I sent it to Luke, and he was like, yeah, it's spot on now, I'll play this. But I think it was too late to update the version on Beatport. So you had the shitty version on Beatport, then you had Luke playing it, and I think he might have sent it to Steve Angelo as well, because I was in a video of Steve Angelo, and back then, like Axel, Steve Angelo, they were like Laidback Luke. I was like, oh yeah, they were playing my records, and I think off of that, it did kind of well on Beatport. So I think it got to 10. It was like top 10.
But this isn't under Siege, right? This is under a different.
No, it's under Siege.
Really?
You can go on Google and search for "You and Me, Touch Me" Siege remix, and it should pop up.
Oh, cool.
But it got taken down from Beatport because they didn't. Oh, I don't know. Maybe they just did it as a cover, but there was somebody else doing a cover as well, and they pulled some strings, and they had to take down anyway. But like that was like my first release. Bit of music that I released.
Where did the name come from then? I always love this. I always love asking this question and getting the answer. Where did the Siege brand come from?
My name is Sieg, so without the E. And when I was looking for a DJ name, I don't know, I just seen it somewhere, and I was like, yeah, okay, sounds good. I didn't want to use my own name, and I was like, yeah, adding an E, yeah, Siege, yeah, okay, sounds fine.
I think it's great because it's that sort of like Axwell, isn't it? And he's just sort of added a well, and there's all those sort of great names that have just sort of added a letter or taken a letter away, or sort of created a brand when it's but it's good, man. It's really memorable. It's I love it as a brand name because it's short but also really memorable. I think it's great.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, man. I really like it. It's one of those ones that's always the first time that I sort of saw one of your records or whatever, I was like, it's one of those ones that just strikes you. You're like, wow, that's a fucking cool name. Like, and it definitely got into my head really quickly. So then what came after that then? Because the first one on Beatport that I can see is a remix on Defected, which is a pretty phenomenal first release on Beatport. So what happened? Obviously that track did well. What happened to get to that Defected release? Or is that a big bit of time? Where are we at this point now? Like at the point where you've done this remix for Sem and Luke's given you the feedback, where are we time wise? How far behind 2010 are we, do you think?
I think when's the Defected one? Is that
the Defected one says 2010? Yeah, like that's. I basically just went onto your Beatport page, and
I think the You and Me thing was released in 2009. Then probably, and so that did quite well. How did that? I've done a remix for Laidback Luke as well, off of that. And that came out on vinyl on Stealth, I think.
Nice. That was Roger Sanchez's label, right?
Yeah, which was quite big as well back then.
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
I got like a kind of manager, because obviously the first record did quite well, and there was a guy who was helping the guys running the label, and he was like, yeah, you need a manager. And I don't know how the Defected one came about, to be honest. I think he might have arranged it. I'm not too sure, but it was like quite, at that point it was like I put out my first remix, it did top 10, and then I done the one on Stealth, and then I think even around that time, Atlantic came in asking for a remix. So like all these bits, I didn't understand it, but like my manager at the time, he was like, dude, Atlantic is like one of the biggest labels in the US. And I mean, they were paying good money, especially back then. I had to work a month, and they were just offering me to do a remix. And I was like, what's happening? But I didn't really understand back then that it was like kind of special, and even like doing the remix on the fact that looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool, like for your first or the first few bits, like doing it on all the big labels straight away.
Yeah, and you've got a remix there of Wes Clark, Without You, featuring Max C. So I mean, that's some heavyweights right there as well. That was an early one on Beatport. Obviously, Wes has gone on to be like, you know, the mix master extraordinaire to the stars. Obviously Max C was on that really famous Axwell record. So yeah, I mean, like, it was really intriguing, because it's not something you do very often, is look at people's first releases. Like, most of the time in this industry, you're all about the latest thing, aren't you? Your latest record. So what's quite interesting for me, it's one of the little bits of research that I do is to just go on Beatport and click, you know, click sort by release. And I mean, mine would be horrific. Please don't do it to mine. But yours is like, I was like, wow. First thing on, obviously you've told the story of the release that got taken down, but I was like, first release on Beatport, remix undefected. I was that is pretty solid. Which is why, in my naivety, I didn't think that Siege was your first brand, if that makes sense. I kind of thought wrongly that you'd been doing something under your own name or under a different name, and then you'd rebranded. So that's mighty impressive, sir. Mighty impressive.
I always hope like nobody's going back on Beatport that much to see it. But on the other hand, like you say, like the first release on the fact that's quite nice, and I mean, I'm still proud of that. And I think Sam Divine, she played it like in a set a couple of months ago. She like got it back up, and I was like, yeah, it's still pretty cool, that remix on the fact that. Yeah,
I did. I think one of my first things on Beatport is like a sort of a. I'm surprised it's still on Beatport, to be honest, because it's the same as your first one. It's like a sort of an edit of Hall & Oates, like I Can't Go For That, and it came out on CR2, and that's another one of those records which like really stood the test of time. Well, like there's a whole lot of shit in between that on Beatport and now, but like the middle stuff, don't listen to the middle stuff. But that first bit, I was like, wow, that still sounds pretty fresh. Like, and like you say, people are still. I think Mark Knight used to play it all the time. Like, and it was really cool. So were you studying music? Like, did you, when you went to, did you say Louvre? Am I pronouncing it correct? Were you studying music?
Yeah. No, Louvre? I was doing like engineering.
Okay.
I did biochemistry.
Wow. Did you, and were you doing a lot of partying there? Like, were you doing a lot of DJing? Like, because you go to a big student place, like in the UK, like, I mean, I made a pretty decent living for about a decade just out of DJing student parties. Like, were you doing a lot of DJing while you were there? Were you doing a lot of partying, or were you a pretty studious, were you sticking to your work?
Well, let me tell you, like, you can go for a lot of things to Leuven, but not for good music. It was all the same, like radio music they were playing like in all the bars. And because before that I was selecting my own music or playing in clubs where they played my kind of music, and I was like really snobby about that as well. Like, I don't listen to that shit. And when we got to Leuven, it was like they were playing it everywhere. So you didn't have like techno club back then. It was all like the commercial stuff. And I was like, but I mean, yeah, I was going out a lot. So you get used to it. And to be fair, we were drinking so much that whatever was playing, it didn't really matter. So I didn't play a lot there. There was like one place that was a bit cooler, and I played there a few times. But even like when I was doing my best to play a commercial set, people would come up to me and like, play something we know. And I was like, I'm pulling my pants down right here, playing this kind of music. You come here and so I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Don't worry about it. I was going to say I did go to the lessons, but I didn't go to the lessons very much. So I was basically partying and making music around
And
that time.
how did that so finishing studying, how did that crossover work? Did you go and get a job like in the field of which you were studying, or did it manifest that you could just go straight into, you said you were getting good money for remixes, you were starting to put records out. Did you go straight into a musical career from there?
So I finished the studies. I did finish it. I got my bachelor in engineering, and then I switched because like it was so far away. I was like, I want to do music anyway, and I was like doing biochemistry, and I wanted to be like a building engineer was the thing that resonated with me most, but you couldn't do that in Leuven. And so I was just going with like, one of my friends is doing biochemistry, so I can get his notes. Okay, let's go biochemistry. So, and then I was like, I'm not going to do this master because it's a lot of work, and I'm not going to. So I went and another mate was doing, I'm doing master management. It's easy. And I was like, okay, I'm doing master management. But because we got some management, we got some economics that did like interest me more, because back then when you go to school, you get like your parents get like money from the government, like child support or whatever. So I started a company, so I can put the money from the remix, I could put it in the company, so I could still work as a student as well. It was like it separates the money. So I was like running my business back then as well, and that because of that, and I got some like accounting and stuff like that it did interest me a bit more. So I went on, I finished that, and then like you say, the question is like, what are you gonna do now? And for me, that moment was like, now I can finally do what I want. And I was getting some money from remixes and stuff, and like it was going quite well. So I was like, I can try it. And I think around that time, my mom bought a new house, and she was like, if you want, I can do the top floor. I can set up a second bathroom there. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was gonna be a full-time musician, and I was pumped about it. And I had my own place there, so I was living at my mom's, but not really, because I mean, I had everything for myself. My music studio was there. I had a small living room, a bed, and a bathroom. And then like the first year, I was like living the life, being in bed till noon, get up, make some beats. I was like, yeah, I'm a full-time music artist now. And I think
that's what we all do. That's what music artists do. Lie in bed all day, make some beats, eat ice cream, back to bed. That's all it is. That's.
I think that's what I've done for a year. And then after a year, like all my savings were gone, because I wasn't making enough money to support to cover all my expenses, because I was used to like going to study and your parents giving you money, and on top of that I was getting the remix money, and I was doing some student jobs as well. So I was like, I could do whatever I want. Like I wasn't rich, but like at that age everything was okay. And I was living with that mindset, and then I was making enough money from my music, so my savings that I had, I just go and spend them. And then at some point I'm like, okay, savings are gone, not making enough money, and I was like, what am I gonna do? And around at that point I was like, it was like the point where, and I think it was like the EDM music was, so I was going in on that route as well, trying to make money and like go with the flow. And I wasn't happy about my music. All my money was gone. I was still living at my mom, so I was like, what am I gonna do? And my mom was like, I couldn't pay my bills anymore. And she was like, I'll help you with this for now, but you're gonna get a job. You're not like doing this anymore. So I went for trying to find a job, and I found something they were selling beds and furniture, and I was the one riding with the van going out delivering stuff. And I've done this for a couple of years. And the good thing was like they wanted something who was self-employed as well. So I didn't have to go in all week. It was like 1 or 2 days a week. And if I had to go to ADE or I had to go somewhere, I was just like, next week I'm not coming in. And it was fine. So it was all flexible. So I've done that for a good couple of years. And then in between that and my music, I was like making ends meet. Also because I was still living at my mom's and I hadn't like didn't have to pay loads of rent and stuff like that. So I've done that for a couple of years.
Cool, man. And then what's the breakthrough moment then? What's the point where you are like, this has changed now. I don't need to do that anymore. Like, was there a breakthrough moment? Was there a record that changed everything for you? Was there a deal that changed everything?
Still delivering the beds.
No.
No.
I was going to say that would be the most awful end to the story. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to wrap this up because I've got a bed delivery. I'm going to have to go.
No. But I think I've done it up until so we're 2020 now. 2018, I think, and the reason why it stopped was because they couldn't afford me anymore. I think it was like they being like, sorry, they were going through some changes for some reason, and they didn't have budget. Like, and I was like asking more money because I was working there for so long, and I was like, I'm not earning enough, and they was like, yeah. I think we're gonna have to call it a day. And so I was like, at that point, I just bought the house that I'm sitting in now.
Okay.
So I was like, with that and the music, it was all right money wise.
Yeah.
I bought the house, and then they were like, yeah, you can't come work for us anymore. And I'm sorry, you just bought the house. And I was like, okay, nice. So at that time I was like, yeah, I'm gonna need to find something else, or my music career has to like take a big surge. And then again, like all this stuff, it just happens. Like I was on Facebook and I think someone was posting a picture like, I'm in the studio today, and it was like a really nice studio, and I was like, no way this guy has a studio like that. So I was like checking out the studio where he was sitting in, and on top of the website of the studio was like, mixers wanted, click here, something like that. I was like, yeah, I need a new job. So I clicked on it, and then you had to fill out your information. A guy called me and was like, yeah, we're doing a big project and we need mixers. And I was like, yeah, okay. Turned out it was for Tomorrowland. They were launching a radio station, the One World radio station. So they needed guys to mix the radio shows. And I was like, yeah, I don't have a job anymore. I need some extra cash. Let's do it. So that's how I started working with them.
Nice.
And I've done that for a year, I think.
So were you kind of producing the radio shows, as it were? You were sort of mixing, like on Ableton or something, you were mixing the tracks together and putting the indents in or whatever and making, like producing the radio shows for the Tomorrowland radio stations, is that right?
They have a system where they just give you a folder with music and they give you a track list.
Yeah.
You have to mix it, like put it in 2 times 30 minutes, make a nice flow. It has to make a nice flow. And then they put the vocals on there and stuff like that.
And would you do that in Ableton?
Yeah, all in Ableton.
Nice, man. I think that's a pretty nice way of earning some money and keeping your foot in. Did that lead to any opportunities at Tomorrowland? Did that lead to any other opportunities for you as a DJ and producer?
So that's the thing. I went from like delivering beds to get mixing shows, and I was like, okay, so I'm doing my music now. I'm mixing radio shows for Tomorrowland. So I was like, okay, I'm making a living from music now. I'm all doing the music stuff, so it was kind of nice for me. And I did quite a lot of mixes and they were happy with it. So that came to do. I could do some more work for them, and I'm not sure I'm allowed to say, but I've done the mix compilations.
Cool.
For them the last 2 years as well. They came about doing that stuff, so that's a nice opportunity to get into with the guys and getting some more work from them. And then
were you touring more at this time? Like, were you touring as a DJ at this point, like 2018? Like, were you doing a lot more gigs?
That was last year we were talking about, and at that time I was doing the stuff with the Tool Room. We were doing the Ibiza season as well. Nice. So everything was like going like in the right direction. I was like really happy with that, and I was like, well, I mean, we're playing for Tool Room as well. A few more gigs here and there.
How did the Tool Room thing come about then? Was that a management thing? Was that Mark reaching out to you? How did your connection with Tool Room really come about?
How did that come about? So by that time I was managed by Jacko. I don't know if maybe you know Jacko, James Jackson from Listen Up.
Yeah, from Listen Up, yeah.
So I think he was working at Defected.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
When I'd done the remix. And then he reached out to me like, do you need like a proper UK manager? Because I was still working with the other guys back then from Belgium. And I was like, yeah, sounds good. So he's done that for a few years. And it was all very nice, but he was getting so much work over at Listen Up, and we had to chat like, he was like, I don't have enough time.
Sure.
Because you need someone who can put a bit more time into you. But a few months before that, I got an offer from Tool Room management to manage me, and I was like, no, I'm with Jacko, and I like kind of refused that. And then 2 months later, Jacko was like, I can't, like, I don't have time enough to so I was like, I'd better said yes to the Tool Room offer. And that basically came about. I've done a remix for BBT, God's Child.
Yeah.
And I think that's one that Mark got, and Mark was really, really digging that. So off of that, I got the Sharam J remix for Tool Room.
Yeah.
And I think from that, I just started sending music to Mark. And he was obviously really liking everything I've done. And from that, they offered me the management deal, and then I refused. And then I got back to them being like, so sorry, are you still interested in working with me? And they were like, yeah. So we went over to Maidstone, to the office. We had a chat. It was with Jacko back then, the first time. We had a chat with them. And from there, they started managing me. And obviously, I started releasing a lot with them as well. So that's how that came about.
So is Paul now technically, is the engine room thing, is that Tool Room, or have you then moved again since that point?
No, that's the management department from Tool Room.
So that is engine room is there
management side of things. Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about some of your. I mean, there's a lot of releases, so we're not going to go into all of them. I mean, there's the ones that are at the top of your releases, like Circles and Forget and Work This. Is there anything is it one of those you'd like to talk about? Is there a record that for you marked a real change in your career or your life? Is there is there a release that you think made a real difference, or do you think it has been a very, very gradual, like, improving narrative all along?
I think, if I'm honest, I still have to like make the one big record.
Okay.
But like one record for me, that's, although looking back at it now, it's still a bit cheesy, but the one that changed it a bit for me was the Crunk one.
Yeah.
That came out on Azuli.
Yeah.
And I was telling you about that point in my life where I was making EDM and really unhappy about music I was putting out. And that's the one thing that I made. Like, I was like, fuck all of this. I'm just gonna go back to what I loved, and I was making, like, when I started this, like making club music, but a bit more housey. So I've done the beat. I don't know how I got this. I think I was listening to like Danny Howard or Pete Tong's show, and there was like a nice grooving record. And in my head, I was having the Mary J. Blige vocal over there, and I was like, oh yeah, let's try something like that. So I made the beat. I done the vocal over on top of it. I love piano, so I done a piano riff for it. And I was like, okay. And that was something that I enjoyed making. I was like, okay, this is more like what I want to do. I don't want to let everyone make their hard-hitting EDM. I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna do this. And I sent it to a few people, and they were like, yeah, it's all right, but it's not. We're not feeling it. And I was like, oh, so I'm making music that I like right now, and no one wants to have it. And I was like, I still had a contact over at Defected, and I think they done the SKT record with Ray, with Azuli. So they had like their moment, and I was like, you know what? Let me send it to them. So I sent to Andy, who was still doing the A&R back then.
Yeah.
And he came back to me in an hour, I think, like with the agreement. So yeah, we want to sign it. And I was like, I got off my desk, I did a little dance in the living room, and I was like, oh yeah. And again, that one did really well. I think it went top 10 on Beatport. And for me, that was like, okay, I can do the music that I like and still be successful in between of all the EDM stuff. And that's what I'm gonna do now. So that's, for me, it was like, it did really well, and I'm still on Spotify. I think it's probably doing more streams than the other stuff, because obviously everybody likes.
Yeah, I used to hammer that record all the time. I used to play it so much.
That's one point, and the other thing is, like, for me in my life, it was a turning point. Like me saying, like, fuck everything. I'm just doing what I like, and it changed a bit from that still, obviously, but it's more like going back, basically going back to my roots. And since it was Defected, and like you say, like one of the first releases on Defected as well, was like gone full circle. And from that point on, was like, yeah, I'm doing my thing now, and we'll see what happens. And I think it turned out quite all right.
Nice. If I wind back the clock to start of January, February this year, prior to us all sort of fully understanding what this year was gonna be, what was your calendar? What was your diary looking like? What were you looking like for gig wise? What were you looking like release wise? If we'd done this podcast in January this year, and I said to you, man, what is your 2020 looking like? What was in there? What was it looking like? And in some respects, how has it changed?
Well, there was definitely quite some stuff happening with the Tool Room, touring wise. They were doing the events as well. They had like an event section they were building, so there was definitely going to be a lot of that. Because I remember going to Amsterdam to have a chat with a new agent, and my mom was like, do you really want to do that with everything going on? And I was like, seeing some people's with masks, and I was like laughing about it, and like they're a bit crazy in the head. And I think next weekend they got the first COVID case in Amsterdam. So I just literally wow. Before this, I signed with a new agent in the Netherlands.
Wow. And
a new one in Belgium, because the music was going great. We had support from Carl Cox. We had an EP on Alan Bayer's True Soul Records. So everything was like going in the right direction, new agent, everything was set into place. And then, the whole COVID thing hit off here in Europe as well. So that was like,
How did it affect your releases then? Like, obviously you were talking about the one with Mark. How has it affected your release schedule this year? Have you released everything that you had signed and scheduled to release, or has everything been bumped back that you had signed and released, or how has it changed this year?
No, we released the one on True Soul, and then the Mark Knight one got pushed back, of course. Apart from that, it's what was in the schedule. We released it, of course. But apart from that, it's like the thing where you're like, okay, you want to release some music because you don't want to disappear off the earth, but you don't want to do one every month because there's no club. So what
and music can't, our music, and I guess even other massive music, because you haven't seen any huge artists really drop in records this summer, and music needs to be consumed in a club with people to create memories, to create emotion. Like, that's the way that you create a big record, is that in this day and age, especially, there's never ending footage of people playing it at festivals and clubs. Do you know what I mean? Like, here's Mark Knight, here's Carl Cox, here's Fisher, here's whoever, Marco Carola, here's whoever. You think back to those records like last summer, and you think back to Carola playing the Joys record, do you know what I mean? And then suddenly it becomes a record. And this is no disrespect to that record, but if you'd released that record in June this year, it would have disappeared. Hardly anyone would have heard it.
It's from those videos from Carola dropping it, and you're like, I need to have that. And that's exactly what Mark said. Like, we need clubs to build its records, and there's no point in putting them out.
So here's a question for you. Here's an interesting one that I've been musing on in this situation. Is it going to be even harder to get your record? I don't mean you here, the Royal We. Is it going to be even harder for me, for you, for other producers to get that record heard? Because surely everyone in the whole world is thinking the same way as me, you, and Mark Knight. And surely when clubs, timing it is going to be unreal, because we also know how long you need to, put things in the machine before it comes out. But surely every single big artist is going to drop what they think is their best record as soon as clubs are going to open again. Everyone from you and Mark to Salado to Fisher, to Hannah Want, to anyone, Alex Preston, who's been on the show, everyone's going to go, here's my best record that I've written in lockdown. And there you go. And so is an interesting way of looking at it. Either we're going to be in for the best year, 18 months of music ever, because there's going to be a bottleneck of music, or our greatest fear as artists will transpire, which is that there's so much fucking music that it just gets lost again. And our greatest ever record that we ever wrote gets washed away in a sea of releases. So then do you hold on to it even longer? Do you hold on to it for 2 years? Do you wait for everyone to get their records out? I don't know what to do, man.
2 years, who knows what we're listening to. So, to be honest, because I said to you earlier as well, in 2018, I think, I bought this house. So when everything started hitting, I was like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to leave it as it is and going to work in the house. So basically this year, what I've done is build a house. And I've done nothing musical related for 6 months almost, I think.
Wow.
I was still listening to music, and I was still at my computer making some beats, but my main focus was building the house. And to be honest, when I came home at night, I was so tired. I just wanted to sit in the sofa and fall asleep, and then get back to it next day. And in a way, I think that's good as well, because I think if I was confronted with the situation every day, then I would probably felt bad about it. Whilst now I was my focus went from music to building the house, and now I'm getting back into it, and my studio's done now, so I'm only starting to think about it right now. And exactly like you say, I have a bunch of records sitting there and like, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to go about it? And as you say, because you don't know when we're going to get back to, because I heard you guys in the UK, you're rolling out the vaccines like this week or next week.
Yeah.
But here in Belgium, they're like, don't put your hopes up for next summer because it might be another one like that. And like, even like, I can't imagine at this point, like Tomorrowland, flying in people from all over the world to have a big festival.
Yeah.
If we're honest about it, it's not going to happen. But what's going to happen? What can we do? I don't know. And like the few gigs I've done this year, all due respect, like the people putting it together, but it's not, it made me more sad than it made me happy because like, it was like people sitting down at a table.
Yeah.
Or it was people in boxes as if it were animals. And I was like, you have to play the music so quiet, which doesn't make any sense because the virus isn't like getting active with loud music. And B, there's nothing social anymore. So I had to play 2 sets. And in between, I was like running around a bit, talking to people. And then the security came like, there's more than 5 people in this box. Who doesn't belong here? Get out. And I was like, it was making me sad, man, because that's what you do when you go, you play a gig, you meet new people, you talk with some people. And so you couldn't play your music loud. You couldn't like talk to people anymore. So I was like, why bother? I'd rather not do anything.
I've hated it, man. Like I've done about, I don't know, 4 or 5 of those gigs over the summer. You know, when things were like a lot, we felt like everything was getting better over the summer. And I did some of those sort of sit downy gigs and the music was so quiet, you know, and I just, like you said, I was so happy to do it because even the emotion, like the sort of the emotional memory of getting my DJ bag and getting like clothes that I wear for DJing and going to a gig and like searching for new music and like all the excitement came back for like the process of it all, the traveling, that, you know, all of that stuff. And then as soon as I started playing and they were like, turn it down. And I was like, what? And then they were like, and then I played some music and some people got up from their seat and just danced in their spot. And people come over like, no, you can't play music that people like and want to dance to. And I was like, that's the entire fucking point of my existence. Like, why do you want me here? Like, you know, like in the end, I kind of half ended up sort of walking out of one gig because I was like, why have you fucking brought me here then? If you don't want me to entertain people, like that's the fucking point. So I've just like, I've just sort of taken an emotional kind of hit on it and gone, I'm not doing that. Like I've been offered, you know, those sit down gigs for like New Year and I've been like, no, I'm not doing it until we get to a point where there's a dance floor again. Like, and I know, you know, people can make different choices. I'm certainly not being disrespectful for anyone who is enjoying those gigs or is doing them or whatever. That's totally cool for everyone to have their own mindset. But for me, it felt so far removed in those gigs from what I know and love doing and spent, you know, 15 years doing, 20 years doing. I was like, I can't. You just hit the nail on the head. It made me more sad than not doing it at all. Like it was too much. Right, man, I'm going to start wrapping it up a bit. I've got a few little things I'd like to do to wrap it up. But first of all, if people want to find out, actually, Stephen Lee will have my head off if I don't ask you about Fader Pro. So shout out your Fader Pro course. Tell people where they can find it. Tell people what to expect if they go and check it out. Just rep that, man, because I'm super interested too.
So the Fader Pro course, it's one that got recorded in the 2 Room Studios, and basically it's me, what I do every day in the studio, like making or trying to make a record from scratch. And the thing, what I've heard from a lot of people is that my process, it's fairly simple. I don't tend to make everything more complicated than it needs to be. So even like beginners, they can take away loads of stuff from it. I work a lot with samples. I don't mind saying that. I love to work with samples, but I try to use them in a bit more of a creative way rather than just whacking 5 samples on top of each other. So basically it's a lot about that. And the response to it has been really great. So yeah, everyone's free to go and check it out. And I hope you learn something from it.
Cool. And if people want to find out more about you, if they want to follow you, if they want to listen to your music, if they want to check out you online, hit us with some links or some things to Google or whatever it is that you want to rep about yourself, man.
They can go to my Instagram, which is @siege.dj, which is, I mean, Instagram is the place to be right now, right? And there's links to my Spotify and everything. So Spotify, Instagram, the rest, I don't think people go on there anymore. So go to my Spotify, check it out. Go beyond the Crunk one that's on top.
Dig a bit deeper.
Yeah.
How many million? Do you know how many million that's at the moment on Spotify? Are you still keeping track of that?
It's divided in two ones. They got the release and they got one from a radio, Defected radio show. I think it's somewhere above 2 million. It's not even that big a number, but it's
pretty
still
big. It's pretty big.
Yeah, but we just seen everyone's stats on Instagram, and if you see like Camel Fat stats, and you're like, wow,
they're so in a way. I posted on my Facebook. I found I went onto the Spotify and I went through the little slideshow that it gives you and tells you all the stuff. And the thing that I was most blown away by was that there was 6 people on Spotify who would listen to me the most as an artist. And I was like, who are these 6 people? What are they doing? I was I put a post up and I was like, thanks, Mum. I don't know who the other 5 people are. I've got no idea, but thank you. But yeah, I mean, the Spotify numbers, I think, they're not, I don't know, man. I know that the whole industry I don't want to go down we've had a lovely chat. I don't want to go down a rabbit warren of me whinging and complaining here. We live in an industry which is all statistics. We live in an industry which is Beatport #1, followers on Instagram, likes, comments, shares. I know that. But I also think the Spotify numbers, in a way, can be very misleading. Some of my, and I was scrolling through Facebook or Instagram and seeing people posting stuff, and some of them made me really question things, because there were some artists that I really, really admire and really look up to who had, relatively speaking, small numbers, right? And I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy, and that's why, I wonder why that is. Then there was other artists who I was like, who the fuck are you, and how have you got 20 million fucking plays? And then I go and look at their Spotify and it's some cover of a Christina Aguilera record on Selected or something, or whatever that's got, and now that's no disrespect to anybody who's done that, and I wish I had that, but at the same time, we also know, and a lot of people listening also know, that if you've done a cover of something and it's got a huge amount of plays, you're not getting very much money from that, because you've lost all the publishing away to, you've lost all the royalties away to the cover. And so it just, I'm going to stop now because I'm having a bit of a moan, but it just felt it didn't feel like a fair playing field of the way that you can judge. It felt wrong to judge people by Spotify plays, I think, is what I'm trying to say in a very drawn out manner.
Exactly what I was thinking. So I was going on Instagram like we all do, and all I was seeing was Spotify stats. And if you want it or not, you're comparing your stats to theirs.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got 1 million plays, which, to be honest, that's quite amazing. Over a year, you got 1 million people stream your music. Wow, amazing. And then you go on, you see Camel Fat, 4 on how many got not, and then you're like, I only got 1 million. And then that at that point you're like, what are we even doing? We're all comparing to each other, and that's all that the social media, I mean, like you say, you can moan about it. It's part of our life, so we have to live with it, and I'm trying to live with it, but I genuinely don't like the way it's going, because we're all comparing to each other, but it's just one little image that you choose to put online that you're comparing to. And I think for us, you know what's happening, but especially children growing up, they've grown up with this and they think this is real life. And I think that's something that's gonna go in your head. And I think it's, I don't want to say dangerous, but I think it's misleading.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous. I had to one of the things, I mean, I've mentioned on the podcast before, one of the things I've found refreshing this year is that I get terrible gig envy. Do you know what I mean? Like, so you go on Instagram and you look at like whoever, Patrick Topping or the Martinez brothers or whatever, and they're just doing these ludicrous fucking parties. Like, they just look so good. They sound good. Everyone there is fucking beautiful. Like, we know that they're getting well paid for it. And there was a point like a year or two ago, I had to start unfollowing people because I was like sat in my car on a rainy day in Newcastle and like I was just feeling shit because I wasn't playing in a fucking Burning Man or something. You know what I mean? I've got no right to play at Burning Man. But I was just like, I was like, I need to stop this because, and I was doing good gigs. You know what I mean? Like, it would be like, even like, I think it was, I posted the other day, it was like this weekend last year, just gone. I was doing a gig with like Salado and Chris Lake or whatever. I'd done Ministry of Sound the night before in London. And I was like, but then on the Monday morning when I wake up and, you know, we all have that sort of weekend hangover and we're alone, we're in the studio trying to do something and everyone's gone and the party's finished. And then suddenly you're scrolling through Instagram and it's like so-and-so's getting on a private jet to go to fucking Italy or whatever. And you just like, and I feel shit again. And I've only just had a great weekend of gigs and suddenly I fucking feel shit. Like, I think it is dangerous, man. I think it is like brutal for our like self-confidence. It's brutal for our self-worth. It's brutal to be, like you said, constantly comparing ourselves to another statistic or another bit of data. Like, yeah, man.
And even if you don't want to do it, and like the Spotify stuff made it like
really obvious,
because you're looking at numbers. But then I was like, in my mind, I was like, basically, that's what we do every day. It's not with numbers, but it's with pictures, and you're just And I was like, oh, it's a bit scary, but yeah.
Right, anyway, let's stop this thought train. I'm going to hit you with some quick fire questions. Then we're going to roll it out to the end of the podcast with a couple of little things I like to do. So, first nightclub you remember going to, like proper nightclub? Like, was it that little one that you played? Like, what was the first nightclub that you remember? You might not have been old enough to be in there, but what was the first one that you walked in and was like, holy fuck, this is a nightclub?
I think it was that. It's called Barabar. And, yeah, like I said, it was like a living room, but a club, but it looked like a living room. And it was like, and that's something I always go back to. And I'm like, I kind of miss those kind of things. Yeah. It all has to be like really big and really nice and really everything. But you just need a room. You need to have like people with the right mindset. You need a great fucking sound system. That's all it needs to be in the end.
Definitely, man. I want to ask you, this is all sort of finished. You know, all COVID's done. It might even be 2022. Who fucking knows? But it's done. It's finished. We can all party safely again. And you get an email from Paul or whatever, your booking agent, and there's a lineup, right? You're going to go and play some amazing club, maybe in Ibiza, whatever, and you're going to warm up for someone, right? And you just see that name and think, oh, I mean, maybe not even warm up, but, you know, go before, like, and you just think, wow, that is fucking perfect because I'm going to get to go to this amazing club. I'm going to play the club. I'm going to get to play exactly what I want to play. I'm not going to have to tailor it because I'm on before this person. So I'm going to play an amazing set. And then when I'm finished and unplug my headphones and this DJ goes on, I'm going to be like, wow, I'm either just going to stand in the booth and watch them because I love what they do and love what they play, or I'm going to be on the dance floor losing my fucking shit because I love what they fucking do. Who is that DJ when you get that email, that booking, and you just go, oh, this is perfect?
It's probably not going to happen anytime soon, but I think like Adam Bear might be a cool one just because I like to start my sets off a bit easier and I like to toughen it up in the end, and I think that would be perfect for like a real techno DJ to take over because I can like play my harder stuff towards the end, and I think it works perfectly for someone like that to take over.
Cool. Track that has most influenced you throughout your musical DJ career? Is there a record that you just stands out to you that you wish you'd made? Is there a record that stands out to you that you can never get sick of playing and listening to? Is there a track that's influenced you in the studio or your DJ sets? What's that one record that really has influenced you over your career? This
is the kind of question that you always get. And there was a record I don't know what it was anymore. And I was like, you need to remember this one because that's one that you really have to say. If they ask you what you wanted to you have made, there is something you have to say. But I mean, I don't know. There's so many great records. Like I said, the Dennis Ferrer stuff, that's something.
I've been listening to Hey Hey so much in the studio recently, like the fucking sounds that he uses, like the little transition sounds and like the fucking depth of the mix. And like, cause I've done a couple of records that I hoped sounded somewhere like a fucking Dennis Ferrer record. And then you like A-B it and you like, fucking doesn't sound anything like a Dennis Ferrer record. What the fuck?
So, yeah. One that I really, Sap, One of Us, Dennis Ferrer remix, I think. And it goes back to like when you said earlier, making memories on the dance floor. And we're not going to go back too much into detail about memories, but that's like one.
Cool.
If you play it at the right moment, I heard it, the right vibe, right moment. And it's just one of those like that gives you goosebumps. And for me, it's a combination. It has a really nice groove, but then in the breakdown, it goes back to the really nice vocals from Forrest, I think, and has like a nice melody line. And it was been played on a night where there was a lot of tech house, like with the same vibe. And then all of a sudden you hear the melody, the vocal. I love melodies, I love vocals, and then it goes back into like the nice groove. And that's one record. Like for me, I wanna have one of those someday. Driving, but then in the breakdown, nice little vocal, nice melody, and then come out back with a driving feel. That's something like, it's not an obvious one, but that's something that I have so much respect for records like that. They're just so well made, and yeah.
Nice, man. Right, this is the second last thing we're going to do, but I'm going to ask you to curate like a dream gig. So this gig can be anywhere you like. It can be like, you can name a place, like it can be in a club that you know and you've played before, like whether that be High or Space or Eden or whatever, or it can just be a generic thing like a main stage at a festival or an underground basement club or whatever. So we need a venue that this place is gonna take place. And then I want 3 acts. It's not so much a warm up and a middle and a headline. It's more like a co-headline, 3 acts that are going to play. You can play, you can go back to back with someone, you can put anyone you like on there, dead or alive, back to back. You can put bands on there, you can put dance acts on there, you can put DJs, you can only go DJs. This is just like a dream gig that you're going to curate. Fuck COVID, that's not a thing. Like, this is just in the moment right now. If we could have a party this weekend and you're going to curate it, where's it going to happen? Siege, where are we going to have this party?
I'm going to go very cliche on this one, but I have to say Ibiza.
Yeah.
Because I've done it last year and it's just amazing. That's one of the things, like, I remember being a kid, like I wanna play in Ibiza at some point. I think we're all like that. And then being able to do it this season with the Tool Room last year was amazing. I really missed going there this year, so I'm gonna go with Ibiza. Sorry, it's so cliche.
Are we doing it in Eden? Are we doing it in Eden? We're gonna have it in Eden?
No, you said I didn't have to mention.
Okay, cool. Okay, so but are we talking a big room? Are we talking like a kind of 1,000, a big room kind of vibe? Or are we talking a small room? Where would you like it to be?
You know what? I like the first time I went to Ibiza was like a bit earlier, and back then you could still do the beach parties. And again, I might be over romanticizing stuff right here, but
this is what it's all about.
That's one memory. I think it was Ushuaia back then, was like just a little cabin on the beach, and I think Sneak was playing, and it was like on the beach, maybe only 100 people, and bumpy. Something like that is like what I said. It doesn't need to be the big crowds, just like-minded people, a good sound system, and nice vibe. So maybe something more like that.
Cool. Who's playing?
I was gonna say Dennis Ferrer, Mark Knight back-to-back myself, Carl Cox back-to-back Adam Beyer, but in the intimate vibe, maybe we could switch that around. Although I'm sure Carl Cox and Adam could do a
Yeah.
softer set as well. So I'm gonna roll with that. Yeah.
Nice, man. Well, I love that. I'm on board. Let's do it. I'll see you on the beach. We've had a great chat. I would like you to pick for the audio version. We're gonna play out this record on the YouTube version. I'll link to it. I'd like you to select a record. We've had a lovely chat for an hour and a half. Like, people have been listening to it. I would like you to select a record that is going to play out this podcast. It can be something brand new from you. It can be something old from you. It can be nothing to do with you. It can be, doesn't even have to be dance music. It can be whatever you want, just to impart a memory in someone or a memory in yourself, whatever you would like. It's just a bit of music to play out this podcast. Please introduce it, sir, and then that's us done.
Let's go with the One of Us Dennis Ferrer remix, because I think it's one that people need to hear. I don't think it's got enough attention, so it's just something that I really love, and I'm not going with something from myself this time. People can check that out later, but play the Dennis Ferrer remix. So this is Sap, One of Us, in the Dennis Ferrer remix.
That is a beautiful choice, sir. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure. I hope to catch you soon when all this COVID has fucked off.
Yeah, man. I hope the same. Thank you for having me.